Hello, friends. In November of 2014, my wife and I had the privilege of visiting Israel. The picture you see in front of you is taken of Jerusalem, and you can see the Dome of the Rock in the foreground, and I want you to notice also the blue-gray dome in the background. That is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which we'll mention just briefly as we go through this presentation. Just to the right of the picture you just saw is the double golden gate. This is a gate that some believe that the Messiah will come through when he comes. What you see in front of you now is a map of Jerusalem. It shows the old city wall in black surrounding the city. You can see the city is divided into four sections: the Christian quarter, the Muslim quarter, the Jewish quarter, and the Armenian quarter. Our hotel, during our visit, was over by the Jaffa Gate on the left side of the map as you see it, and that's where we stayed. I also want to point out the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. You can see it's in the Christian quarter, almost in the city center. This is a church that many revere as the place of Christ's death and burial. But let's take a look and see what the Bible says about where that ought to be. Hebrews 13:12 says, "Wherefore Jesus also, that he might sanctify the people with his own blood, suffered without the gate." This verse tells us that Jesus was crucified outside the city gates, not inside the city. The picture you see is of the Damascus Gate. It's on the north side of the city. The upper right area you see is the Damascus Gate as it is today. The lower doorway you see there is the first century gate. John 19:20 says that the place where Jesus was crucified was near to the city. So we know it was outside the gate, but it wasn't too far away. What you're seeing in this photo is a view from across the street outside the city of one area where the wall is actually built on the rock. I thought it was an interesting photo. This next map of Jerusalem shows the Church of the Holy Sepulchre there towards city center. And there's an area up in the directly north of there. It's referred to as the Garden Tomb. And we're going to explore this site since it is outside the city gates and it is also close to the city. Here we are at the entrance to the Garden Tomb. Almost as soon as you enter the Garden Tomb, there's a sign that directs you to a place that's referred to as Skull Hill. This is consistent with John 19:17, where it says, "And he, bearing his cross, went forth into a place called the place of a skull, which is called in the Hebrew Golgotha." You may also recognize the name Calvary, which is the Greek translation of the same. This picture was taken in the late 1800s of the place of the skull. And as you can see, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to notice that. Also, you'll see in this next picture a little bit closer view of the same place. This is what the place of the skull looks like today. As you can see, there's a bus terminal in front of it. And the ground's been built up some, but it's still there even yet today. Looking at the place of the skull from inside the Garden Tomb area, you can see it across there, and you can see some buses, or at least a bus below it. I'm showing you this because I wanted you to see the close proximity it is to the Garden Tomb area. A couple hundred feet to the left of the place of the skull is a very unique area. They've now built a deck and have some benches in there, but there's some unique things in the wall of this. Notice the small cutout in the rock. This is where the Roman ensign would have been posted. This is where they communicated and put up signage. And in this case, it would be signage having to do with what crime an individual committed that was worthy of crucifixion. Here's one of the cutouts. There are actually three. There's two side by side, and there's actually one under the deck. I included a couple of pictures of the area underneath the deck before it got covered over, just so you could see. You can see the cutout. You can also see how deep it is. It's probably 12 to 14 feet deep, and therefore the signage would have been up towards the head of the person being crucified. When this area was excavated, they excavated down until it hit bedrock and then went out away from the cliff face, and they actually found 3 cross holes. And the picture you're seeing is actually of Jonathan Gray. He's a amateur archaeologist. He's actually holding a replica of a stone plug that was inserted into the center cross hole, which presumably was put there to keep the dirt out. One interesting thing of note is that when they pulled the plug originally, there was a Tiberius coin in there that dated it back to the 1st century, so the timing would indeed be that of the time of Christ. Matthew 27 records that when Jesus died, the earth quaked and the rocks were rent. You can see that a prominent feature of this area, if you look above the deck, is a big split in the rock. The split actually runs all the way down to the bedrock below, but some of it that's in front of you has been actually filled in over time. John 19:41 and 42 says, "Now in the place where he was crucified there was a garden, and in the garden a new sepulchre wherein was never man laid. There laid they Jesus, therefore, because of the Jews' preparation day, for the sepulchre was near at hand." This tomb is actually located only about 150 feet or so. If you were facing the cliff face, it'd be to the left of the place of crucifixion. So indeed, it was very close to that location, as recorded in John. John is also very specific that it was a garden area. This was substantiated while we were there. Didn't get pictures of it, so I pulled these from the internet. But this is what it looked like. You can see the kids leaning over, looking into the top of a very, very large cistern. You can see in this picture that it is very large, would have held a lot of water, which would have been necessary in a garden setting. Looking back at the garden tomb itself, you can see that there are some blocks in the side beside the doorway. When they were excavating this down, they didn't know this was here. They accidentally broke through part of that wall, so it's been repaired. As we look into the tomb itself, you can see the area where there would have been a person laid. There's also another unused tomb just like it. It would be to your right and towards you. There's also a weeping chamber on the left side of the tomb. There's a well-written paragraph in the book. It's called Desire of Ages, page 774 by Ellen G. White, that describes this situation a little bit. I'll just share that with you. It says, "Gently and reverently they removed with their own hands the body of Jesus from the cross. Their tears of sympathy fell fast as they looked upon his bruised and lacerated form. Joseph owned a new tomb hewn in the rock. This he was reserving for himself, but it was near Calvary, and he now prepared it for Jesus. The body, together with the spices brought by Nicodemus, was carefully wrapped in a linen sheet, and the Redeemer was borne to the tomb." This would have been the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, and it was built for himself and probably for his wife as well. So it's interesting to note that in preparing a tomb for someone else, there's a feature in the end of the tomb at the foot end of this used tomb area that is actually dished out. The tomb itself was made for someone who's about 5 foot 8 inches tall, and clearly it had to be modified in order to fit the person that was actually laid there. It was dished out roughly about 3 inches, and so the person that was laid in there was more likely about 5 foot 11. So clearly this tomb was used by someone other than who it was built for. Yet another evidence. Matthew 27 says that when Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn out of the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the door of the sepulchre and departed. I made a simple graphic illustration of the stone. On the right side of the tomb, there's actually a rock ledge that would stop the stone from moving to the right. and really the same on the left. So when the tomb was open, the rock would be rolled to the left. When the tomb was closed over, it would be rolled to the right. This very large stone rolled in a kind of a track or a trough that was created in front of the tomb area when it was carved out, when it was built originally. You can see in these pictures that the track goes all the way through the front of the tomb area there. I put my hand down on the track just to see how wide it was. It appears to be about a foot in width, so this would have been a very thick, heavy stone. From the same book, Desire of Ages, this time page 778, we find it says the priests gave directions for securing the sepulchre. As you recall, they were afraid that something would happen to Jesus' body and things would get worse for them. It says a great stone had been placed before the opening. Across this stone they placed cords, securing the ends to the solid rock and sealing them with the Roman seal. The stone could not be moved without breaking the seal. The way they decided to fasten these cords to solid stone would be they actually drove an iron rod into the face of the tomb that they actually secured the cords to, and my wife is actually pointing at it. In case you're wondering about the size of the stone, if you measure from the iron pin in the rock face to the other edge where the stone would have rested when it was closed, it's just a little over 13 feet. So this was indeed a massive stone. Matthew 28:2 says, "And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven, and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat on it." The pin that was holding the cords also secured the stone from moving. So you had to shear through at least a 3/4 inch iron rod to be able to roll that stone back. The angel apparently had no problem with that, because he sheared it off, and the remains of the iron rod are still there today. The final evidence for this location as being the true location of Christ's death and burial and resurrection comes from Matthew 28, where the angel answered and said to the women, "Fear not ye, for I know that you seek Jesus, which was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen, as he said. Come see the place where the Lord lay." I can tell you that the tomb is empty. Thanks very much, and I hope you're blessed by this.